Hi, everybody. It's Karen Roby here for ZDNet with Chris Matizjik. Of course, Chris, we are all dealing right now with coronavirus, the implications. Of course, we are working from home at this point, not working in the office. And most things, it seems right now in the news center around the coronavirus. And I'm glad that we are actually going to have a little conversation here about something that impacts us all, but doesn't have anything to do with coronavirus. So thank you for that. Just starting off, this is a discussion that you had with your wife at dinner the other night. I want you to tell everybody about it and why it impacts other people.
Well, we decided to go out to dinner because of coronavirus, because we know the local restaurants are suffering a bit, and we thought we'd go out to support them. So we went to one of our more favorite restaurants. It's called Octavia. And we sit down, and then my wife gets an urgent text, and she types away to respond to it. And then she puts her phone down on the table. And I'm looking at this thing, and I have to look at this thing most days because, we all use our phones far too much. And her phone is a Samsung Galaxy S7. Not only is it an S7, it's an S7 that has seen better days, as we all have. And I would describe it, the English word for it is grotty. It's old, it's worn, it's slowed down. And when I started making points to her like this during dinner, I said, why don't you get a new phone? She said, well, why do I need a new phone? And I said, well, your phone is old, it's grotty, it's slowed down. And she looked at me and said, well, I married you, didn't I? Now that kind of stopped me in my tracks somewhat, but no. You see, I write a column for ZDNet. I am not going to be deterred. We're supposed to encourage people to at least consider the new things that are coming out, and the Galaxy S20 has just come out. 3 Galaxy S20s. So I say to her, well, but wouldn't you want to take better pictures with your phone? She said, I already take better pictures than you and your fancy iPhone, so why should I get a new phone? And actually, that's true. She does take better pictures with her S7. And I have no clue why. So then I thought, well, your phone is old. It's 4 years old. How old is your phone, Karen? Do you have any idea how old your phone is?
Mine is actually it's less than a year, but I've been on the two-year cycle. It seems 2 to 2.5 the most before they break.
Right. Well, my wife is on 4 years.
That's
And
unheard of.
And for her, it's 4 years isn't a lot of time. Whereas for a lot of people in, I guess, the tech world especially, but also those who want to keep up with the latest trend, 4 years is 50 years for some people. But on the other hand, you see, my wife's a scientist, and for her, things like facts, things like rationality still matter, which very strange. Why she married me, I have no idea, but that's certainly not rational, is it? So she insisted. I said, what about 5G? And she said, well, how's that different from all the other Gs there have been before? Have they really made that much difference to our lives? Probably not. And so I kept trying to explain to her that, this phone would be more exciting. And she does like some new things. She does like occasionally buying new things. Nothing seemed to sway her. And in the end, she said, well, the biggest issue is the new Samsung Galaxy S20 costs $1,000. She said, why would I want to spend $1,000 on a phone when I'm perfectly happy with mine? Now, I need to explain to you, her phone, she started trying to hypnotize me during dinner because she was so, I don't know what the word is, probably slightly annoyed or frustrated or tired of me trying to explain to her why she should get a new phone. And her phone, one of the other arguments she had was, well, I don't want to have to get a new case. So I've grabbed her phone specifically for this video, and this is the case she has. See the sparkles? You can watch the sparkles go down slowly. Can you see them, Karen?
I'm being hypnotized as we speak.
Yes. So she ended our dinner by attempting to hypnotize me, going, you don't need a new phone. Watch my sparkles. You don't need a new phone. And honestly, at the end of it, we like to have a laugh at dinner, but this was kind of, relatively serious for us to discuss a phone. I mean, discuss a phone over dinner. But she has a point that there are now more and more people who are completely happy with it. Even if the screen yellows a little bit, even if the phone looks a bit worn, for them, it still works. And as phones have become more and more expensive, they say to themselves, well, do I really need to spend $1,000 on a phone when I could spend $1,000 flying to Europe when it was allowed. So it's very difficult. I mean, I guess you spend thousands of dollars on your phone, do you, Karen?
Well, it pretty much seems that way every couple of years. We're having to constantly replace it, I feel like. But I think the interesting thing here too, Chris, is that, and I understand her point. I like her point of view. And I think it sounds like what you were telling me earlier too, in terms of the response that you've received. Expand on that a little bit. It seems like a lot of people are in her corner on this.
I got a lot of messages from this column saying, I completely agree with your wife. It's not just that she sounds more sane and sensible than me. People have begun to realize that their phones work just fine. And in a way, it's very flattering for the likes of Apple and Samsung because it shows they've made products that do last, that don't depend on a 1 or 2 year cycle and then just die. In my wife's case, her phone is slowing down. And I'm sure there'll come a time, perhaps even now, when the updates for her phone simply won't happen anymore. She won't be able to even keep up with the systems that are being put in place. So it's true, but it's flattering. It is flattering for the manufacturers, but of course they want us to buy every year or two so then they can have marvelous financial results.
Oh, well, of course they do. I think it just brings up an interesting thing to ponder, Chris. Maybe what we think or we're conditioned to believe we need to do in terms of a buying cycle really isn't at this point, especially since phones have pretty much, it seems, kind of followed the same track, right? In the last couple of years, we haven't seen a huge shift in how they work or what they're able to do.
I think that's true. And I think that's one of the reasons why Samsung is trying to release folding phones, because what it's doing is it's trying to excite those who are supposedly tastemakers, you know, the Instagram influencers who really have no necessarily brains whatsoever, but somehow manage to take beautiful pictures and influence everyone that they have something to say. In order to create a new form factor, these folding phones, and look at the prices on those phones, 1,300, 2,000, in order to make people think slightly differently, as if, you know, well, if the exciting people have this phone, then I should have that phone too. But yes, you're right. If you look at the S20, and I did go and take a look at it personally, it's not that different from the S9 if you really focus hard. It's a lovely phone, but is it that different from the S9? Not really.
Something to ponder as always. But I'll tell you what, I sure do like her taste in cases, Chris. I like that dripping down glitter. She would have to replace that. So yeah, I can understand why she'd be hesitant. Well, always giving us something to think about. Chris Matishik here with us. Thanks for being here, Chris. And again, we want everybody to keep sending in their comments, their thoughts on, do you agree with Chris's wife and her decision not to upgrade at this point? Let Chris know what you have to think. Thanks, everybody.